All right, back at it with our guy Austin Ward, a little day tripping. Ohio State football beat reporter Letterman Rowe, and of course here at the Fan. All right, my man, how you feeling?
Feeling great. Great to be with you guys on another Tuesday. A little earlier start for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes on this particular Tuesday, with campus being closed down for Veterans Day. Thanks to all who serve, of course. But that also gave us a little extra hour there to get started with Ryan Day at 11 today.
So he had mentioned the Carnell Tate situation, that they just weren't 100% on him in warmups and why force it.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear any update today, a few days later. Are you anticipating that he'll be back in this week, or are they going to just play the week out and see what happens?
Yeah, I think we'll have to wait and see, Anthony. Ryan Day got asked about that as he was sort of, leaving the podium. Just any update? The Joey Kaufman from the Dispatch shouted that out, and Ryan Day said no update. About what I anticipated, especially with, the way it's sort of been described with, muscle tightness and going through warm-ups and practicing in the limited fashion that it seems like he did last week. You want to get back out there this afternoon and see. You're going to want to monitor that on Wednesday afternoon. I think they'll take this all the way up, but maybe even till Saturday in pregame warm-ups to see if it is fully there. This is not the kind of thing, if it is as described by Ryan Day and some others, a muscle situation, you don't want to mess with it. You don't want to get him out there prematurely, especially if you are in the midst of this stretch where you go to Purdue and then you have UCLA as a massive underdog, and Rutgers will be the same thing next week. You want to be, I think, cautious is the right approach. The balance is you want to make sure that Carnell Tate is still fresh when you head up to the Big House or to Indianapolis the following week for the Big Ten championship game. So we'll see how this week progresses for him. I think it'll be a relatively similar situation with Phillip Daniels there at right tackle, Tywone Malone at defensive tackle. Ohio State was really conservative with those borderline issues last week. Even somebody like Quincy Porter, who desperately wants to play and make the most of Carnell Tate being out at wide receiver. He was questionable. They held him on the sideline against Purdue as well. So that's a game where it made a lot of sense. And that could be the same case on Saturday night.
We've been asking you almost every week, I think, Austin, about the run game and how you're feeling about that. Coming out of this Purdue game, your evaluation of that offensive line, the running back crew, and how they did.
Yeah, I thought it was better, Matty, and I think we could maybe even say that more emphatically if there hadn't been, the block in the back from Jeremiah Smith on the first offensive snap of the game for Ohio State with Bo Jackson breaking one. Like, you got to look, I think, and sometimes with a penalty, we just immediately move on. I think the scheme, some of the creativity, the explosive, it was well blocked. The read was right from Bo Jackson. He hit the hole. He pulled away. I think there were all those things wrapped up in that one play. It's like, okay, this is maybe more what we expect to see from Ohio State. But even if you look on at the rest of the game, and if you're not blown away necessarily, with the numbers, I would understand that. But Bo Jackson, 14 for 75. I believe Isaiah West was 9 for 60. You're going to take 5-6 yards per carry from those guys when you're complementing that with Ohio State's passing attack. So, they're not asking for the world. They're probably not going to get the world. It's not going to be the nation's most dominant rushing attack. But I think it can be certainly more than serviceable. It can be better than what we saw in the middle stretch of the season. But I think, Purdue did some things defensively, I think, that were relatively impressive. They had 53 tackles for loss going into that game last week. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out here at once, but that was a fairly decent barometer in my opinion, especially with a banged-up offensive line playing without Phillip Daniels, and they didn't have Josh Padilla, who I think we would have seen a lot more at right guard on Saturday against Purdue had he been fully healthy. So I think that there were steps in the right direction. It doesn't mean that it's done. It doesn't mean that they can't still dip into that playbook and different scheme and maybe even leaning more heavily on Bo Jackson and Isaiah West down the stretch than they did on Saturday. But I would come away, Matty, thinking that Saturday was a step forward for the Buckeyes in the run game.
You know what, Austin? I could sense in his voice, he was kind of glowing talking about Bo Jackson. And they've been really good at, not putting too much on his plate all season long. They've kind of just been spreading him out a little bit. Even when there was a cry for, well, he's definitely the number one running back, he should be getting it 25 times a game. And I think they've done a really good job at kind of slowly keeping his carries now in the middle teens and not overdoing it. But today, I just got that sense that he knows it's November. He knows that throwing the ball, while they should continue to throw the ball, there may be a game where, especially the one in Ann Arbor, where you can't predict the weather yet. Like, I could just sense that Bo Jackson's day may be coming, and that may be it. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you after you give me your reaction to that is, most coaches do like when you have a big quarterback like Lincoln Kienholz, when you can get an extra blocker in and have 10 blocking for one instead of handing the ball off. I could sense that may be part of moving forward in that Michigan game. Where are you on both those things?
Yeah, when it comes to, Bo Jackson, and I said, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with you guys on a Tuesday, and it's like, well, they could find roles for all four of these guys, and I don't know if that would work. They've still continued to do that. Now, will that be the case in the game? Will that be the case in a college football playoff game? I tend to agree with you, Anthony, that the way this is trending has been you can use all four to get through the season, but then once you get to talent equated, once you get to playoff, once you get to gold pants on the line, you're probably going to need to have a 1A and a 1B along the lines of what Ohio State deployed last year with Quinshon and Travion. And I think that we're setting up here for Ohio State to be leaning on Bo and Isaiah West to do that. And that doesn't mean that there aren't ways that James Peoples can still be used, and we know that will continue to be used in the red zone. The thing that I liked the most about that play with Lincoln Kienholz, Anthony, was actually C.J. Donaldson turning in to the lead blocker there. Mm-hmm. And it made me think about, some of the stuff that we've seen with 14 personnel and Nate Roberts at fullback. I'm kind of intrigued by this notion that maybe you get into the late season scenario and you put C.J. Donaldson in front of Bo Jackson, or you put C.J. Donaldson in front of Isaiah West in that red zone situation. You could still hand it to him. I flashed back to the way that Ryan Day and that offensive staff used Chip Trainum a few years ago as a Swiss Army knife. I think C.J. Donaldson can do that, but I do agree with you when we're talking about, they get to this portion of the season, you're probably going to start to see some of this narrowed down, and Bo Jackson is going to be getting the lion's share of that work.
I like the idea, too, of having Lincoln out there, and maybe it's a little bit of a tell right now to defenses that when he's out there, he's going to run it. But in the back of my mind, Austin, I'm thinking about that Tim Tebow jump pass at the line of scrimmage in a critical moment. And maybe could they pull that out? We've seen Derrick Henry do that as a big, imposing guy where defenses, when they see him, they identify run. But I think with Lincoln, maybe they can keep that in their back pocket to surprise somebody.
And I don't even know if they'd keep it in the back pocket, Maddie. I feel like because of what you're talking about, I bet we'd see Lincoln Kienholz this week in the red zone, and he'll throw it this week so that the team that has to prepare 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out has to be aware of that in those situations. I've never been someone that loves quarterback rotation or even packages, thinking back to J.T. Barrett and Tate Martell, Devin Brown on down the list. It's not been my favorite thing, and I think there's certainly a world where Julian Sayin can operate some of that stuff, although I understand you don't want to put the hits on his body if you don't have to. But if I was a gambling man, and at times in my life I've certainly been that, Anthony and Maddie, I would think we'd probably see Lincoln do that, and he gets a chance to throw it this week just so that's on film as well.
Okay. Good stuff, my man, as always. Thanks, bud. We'll see you soon. Yep.
Right.
That's Austin Moore, Letterman Monroe, here on The Fan on the Bryant Heating Cooling Systems Fan Guest Hotline. I'm not a fan of showing it.
I want to keep it secret, too.
I don't like it. I
understand what he's saying.
Well, what he's saying is then when he's in, you don't know what they're going to you'd have to be aware of both. But I like the
element of
I've
surprise.
never seen it. I don't think I've ever thought of it. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't love the throwback punt against Minnesota. I don't love putting it on tape. I'd rather hold that in a game where I don't need it.
Yeah.
But
I've been thinking about that, though, with Lincoln. Like, things get a little squirrely in that Michigan game.
He's
and things
big
get
and physical,
tight.
though. They love 10 guys blocking for him.
Yeah, I think you can use both, but I think you can surprise somebody maybe in a critical moment the rest of the way and hit him with that little jump pass over the line of scrimmage.
And if it doesn't work, then everybody says, why'd you overthink it?
Coach Day will say, I blame Matty Ice. He's the one
That's right. He's the one that called it. He called the play. Here's the play I want to call for you guys. A lot of times this time of year, you'll see like, you'll be waiting till Thanksgiving or even afterward to get big savings. And I talked to Rich over at Germain Honda of Dublin, and what they do is they start it now. Like, you don't have to wait till Black Friday to go and get a great deal on a vehicle, even though they'll have them then too. But like some of the ones we talked about today with the savings that are happening on them right now, 2026 Honda Passport RTL all-wheel drive, of course, only 3.99% APR for up to 36 months. You could drive the 2025 Honda Accord LX. That's incredible, 2.99% APR up to 36 months. They've got great vehicles over there at Germain Honda of Dublin with an awesome team. They're on Sawmill Road, just south of 270, and you can start scouting now and eyeball some of these great vehicles at great pricing online anytime with my friends at Germain Honda of Dublin at germainhondaofdublin.com.